So hopefully all of you have created your low poly mesh. I'm just going to talk a bit about mine before going ahead with anything. Um, so I've pretty much reduced, there's many layers of character costuming that I've reduced down. I hadn't really figured out all of the elements, but what I'm basically going to do is take the low poly version of the mesh, the base mesh, and basically unwrap it. And if you wanted to preserve the, let's say, the shapes and colors from here, you could pre-bake this out um, from ZBrush and bring it over to Substance. But one thing for sure I will do is sort of organize the model into basically different polygroups. Um, One set of polygroups I will use as the basis for UVs, and then I'll probably switch the polygroups around for um, something known as an ID map, and that will allow you to kind of very quickly select certain parts of the character and the costume elements to basically apply very specific materials to very specific parts of the character. Okay, so I'm just going to double check all my low poly stuff here. So one of the things I like to do is to make sure my mesh is clean, is pretty much ready for production. I'm going to go to check mesh, and then I usually go to optimize points. This just kind of improves the mathematics behind the model, so that it'll be stable. It shouldn't cause any errors or glitches when unwrapping or sending things from Maya to ZBrush and then maybe back to Maya, then to Substance Painter. The other thing I like to do, like I said, is I'll go to UV Master, and I'll say, since I have polygroups, usually I do group by normals, which is under geometry, or sorry, polygroups actually. Polygroups group by normals, but in my custom interface, it's over here on the left side under, I think it's subtool organization group by normals. And I've also kind of tucked it into Z Remesher now in my newest edition, just because I use this a lot with remeshing. So these polygroups should allow you to get a fairly good, quick, clean unwrap. So if I hit unwrap with polygroups on, and then if I go to flatten, you can see the patches are pretty decent. Some might need to be split because I think some here are still just one giant piece. I don't think group by normals was perfect, but I usually will send it to Maya to kind of fix some of that stuff up. Okay. For the body, I had used these polygroups initially just to remesh the character. But since I'm now beyond remeshing, I typically think about clothing. So when your character has clothing, you want to look at like clothing patterns. Right, so this is typically how we unwrap, and usually in clothing, right, the seams are either kind of hidden or they're just in a place where it's very obvious, right? So these would be for pants. So that's one of the general rules I follow, is to sort of say, okay, like what are the pieces that sort of make up the clothing? Where would be a natural seam in clothing? And when it comes to like exposed skin, again, you want to try to hide seams. So usually on a leg, you'll put a seam around the ankle, one around the kind of hip waist. So we'll take a look at that in a second here. So yeah, for let's say the pants, since these are in fact pants, I'm going to use the select rectangle brush and isolate this. Okay, I'm going to hit Control W, and then I'm going to basically isolate half. So again, we usually have a split down the middle of the pants, right where the two halves are meeting. I'm going to just turn off symmetry for this, by the way. Okay, so there, I should have a pretty good half. I'm going to also turn on double-sided display so I can see things clearly and quickly. I'll hit Control W. And again, usually we have a split through the sides. Now you can, again, if it was just an exposed leg, I usually just have one split on the inner side. So sometimes I'll do that in Maya. There's a way to do it in ZBrush, but I just find it a little bit more clumsy. So I'm going to stick with it here in ZBrush. And I'll use select lasso. So again, I'll kind of control shift click on an edge loop, and that should go through the whole ring of edges. Okay. I'll do the same thing on the other side. Oops. Just make sure we hit the edge and not the polygon. There we go. Right. So that's kind of like a split through half. And sometimes, maybe this mesh has a little deviation in terms of the poly loops here, but I'll just continue down this direction. And that should be okay. I'm going to basically go to, again, this is in polygroups. You can go to auto groups. So when there's a gap between mesh, it'll automatically regroup these separately, right? So you see kind of a lighter purple on the front and kind of a bluish purple on the back. Now that will create this stripe, which I don't want. So I'll Control Shift click on this group, hit Control Shift X, which expands it. Now again, I don't want to include this upper blue group, so I'll hide that and the middle seam there, and I'll just hit Control W now. So that kind of creates a simple patch for that side. Okay. Now if this mesh is basically symmetrical, I'll just do a mirror and weld so I don't have to double my work, right? That's an easy way to go about it. Next up, I'm going to hide these. I'll do the mirror and weld at the end. Oops, yeah. And sometimes the Select Lasso tool is great for hiding these rings or poly loops, but sometimes it's frustrating just to select and hide stuff, so I'll often switch back to Select Rectangle. For this, it's kind of similar. I actually want the full sleeve, and I think I'll leave the end sleeve on its own, so I'm going to hide that, and I'll basically hide this. So I'll keep the whole sleeve as one group. Okay, Control W. Again, if you want to split it, similar to the pant leg, you can. And also another sort of feature or something I suggest is that when the angle changes very steeply, like there's kind of a sharp angle or a very, rapid change in angle, I often will split there. But again, that can be saved for Maya. And then for this piece, I'll hide this, and I might keep this little rim here just because it's sort of my overlap area for the base of the neck. So I'm just going to hide that and hit Control W. Oops. Let's make sure to hide the other groups again. Control W, and then I'll do something similar. So again, I have no inner mesh that's hidden. There's no just floating solid mesh in here. There's no shell in this case, and it really helps optimize the topology and the mesh and the textures and the pixels towards the stuff you're going to see and not the stuff you're not going to see. So that is very, very useful. So again, with a shirt, right, if you look at a shirt pattern, or let's say this jacket, right, it's sort of split along the top around the shoulder area. So I'm not changing topology, I'm basically changing the UVs, right? So, oops, let me just make sure. Again, Control Shift click on the edge loop, and I could do this in symmetry, and I'll solo, there we go. So I usually go just kind of beyond what I think is sort of the halfway point or where that seam would naturally rest. Oops, there. Same thing here, kind of going from the armpits. There we go. And then I'll Control Shift Alt and sort of hide the rest. That's another way to just kind of quickly, hide the other sections here. Control W, there you go, front to back, right? And like I said, if you want to do something similar with the sleeves here, you can basically do that as well. Oops, again, I'll go to, again, it can be tricky when the mesh is a bit dense, but yeah, let's do that here. Maybe, oops, here. Okay, and then I'll do the same here. Just kind of quickly use the lasso and Control W. Now, right, for a full body, you'd think, oh, this takes an hour, 2 hours. Have you done a full body unwrap yet? Maybe last year? But yeah, let's say if I go to unwrap, okay. Then I go to Z plugin. And by the way, if you have division still, so you have your low poly and it's divided up with the high poly sculpting, you can't just go to flatten. You'll have to say work on clone. And what that does, I'll just show you. If you hit that, it basically isolates this as its own subtool and a separate Z tool basically in the palette. So you'll see it's called CL, whatever the subtool was. So that way you can at least flatten this to preview. But look at the UVs. They're actually like pretty good, right? They look like a fabric pattern. Like I said, maybe the legs on the one side, they weren't split, so you see some stretching and some weirdness. But if I go back to this model, the actual original, right? I'm going to do the mirror and weld trick. So hopefully everything's still symmetrical. I believe so. I'll go to mirror and weld. Oh, I actually won't do mirror and weld just because if I mirror and weld, then this left side will become the same group as the right side. So I'll sort of do this by hand, by eye. So yeah, if I want to do a split, I'll try to kind of mimic it or mirror it this way. There. Control Shift click, and then let me just double check here. It's kind of hard to see, but I'll just try to get a slight tilt on the view so I can sort of match it up if I can. It doesn't have to be exact either. Sometimes like the little imperfections are best. There we go. I just want enough of a hidden area so that I can basically, yeah, hide this off. This is good also to do not in perspective. So, oops, did I hide? Yeah. I'm going to hide more of this first. There. Sometimes it's harder to see. There we go. I will isolate this. Isolate this. Hide that section. Oops. Control Shift Alt. There we go. And yeah, there's this weird selection down here, so I will hide that. And then I'll hide this other piece. So that should give me Control W. Now I have 4 distinct groups. Okay. So that makes UVing much easier, much faster, and it saves a lot of time, I find. Okay, so that's that part. I'm going to kind of go through the rest. I do like to make sure I kind of go through as many of the tools as possible. The hands, I think my hands basically came with polygroups, and this is okay as a starting point. So again, if I go to Z plugin, yeah, I'll hit unwrap. I'll go back. Like I said, if I try to flatten, it's going to say flatten is only allowed on a mesh without subdivision. So this mesh, like I said, it has divisions. So the easy way to deal with this is just to go to Z plugin, work on clone, and then hit flatten, and you'll see how the hands are split. It's not bad, but usually the way I like to deal with this is to, is that the right one? Yeah. Yeah, the best way to deal with this is to actually split them in half, kind of like a glove. Okay, so sometimes I keep the fingers separate, sometimes I keep them attached. It just depends on, you know, if the character does have like a fabric kind of glove or not. In this case too, I'm not sure about detail. So don't forget too, like you can always rebake stuff later on. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it does require a bit more work. So there we go. I'm going to just Control Shift click the bottom half of the hand, the palm, and I'll do the same thing with each finger. So let's solo this. There we go. Yeah, sometimes too it's a little awkward with the selection modes here, but there. So now I'll hit Control W with that sort of upper half. Oops, I grabbed too much there. Let's adjust that. Now, if you prefer unwrapping in Maya, that's totally fine, but I really like the polygrouping inside of ZBrush, so I do find it very, very useful. And I find it gives me really good results too, so that's another reason why I tend to stick with the ZBrush tool as a starting point for my UVs. So yeah, I'm Control Shift clicking on this upper edge, and you'll see it kind of run through and sort of separate out the kind of bottom half of the finger from the top. It's one of the reasons why when I design the hand, it has 6 edge loops that feed into the end, so that we can do this sort of a quick selection adjustment. Like I said, it's useful to have either solid polygroups for the whole finger or 3 segments, right, for each portion of the digits. And then once you get to actual, you know, UVs, that's when you want another polygrouping. Okay, so I'm going to hide again that base part, and now I'll just simply go to auto group. Okay. So again, that's under polygroups, but in my custom interface, it's under subtool organization auto group. Now I should see, yeah, I think I did this on both sides. Yes, it looks like it. So back to Z plugin, unwrap. By the way, you start getting lots and lots of clone tools, and this can make your ZBrush a bit heavy and slow. So I usually will just reset this, and it makes it easy for me. So hitting the little R key resets the number of open projects or Z tools. So I'll go back to Z plugin, hit unwrap, and then just go to flatten. And again, I think I have to work on clone because this tool has division. So I'll say work on clone. And then I'll just go to flatten so I can kind of see or preview what, and you know, these UVs look very, very good, right? Very clean. So I'll just simply jump back to the original and move on to the next piece. Yeah, these are the boots. I'm going to just go in and double check. I think, yeah, these don't have a division on, I believe. There's no divisions. And you should also double check for dynamic subdivision. So this one doesn't have dynamic subdivision, which is good. I think this one doesn't either. I'm actually going to merge these two because, you know, I just kind of have the tongue sort of sticking out there, which for me is fine. There. You know, it feels like it blends into the rest of the boot pretty seamlessly. For now, I'm not going into any of the detailed laces and stuff like that. It's not that important, but I'll go down to merge. I think I'll merge the two pieces together because they make sense as a single piece. Merge down. Okay. And let me just double check the polygroups here. So I'll solo this again. Again, with polygroups, it's great because, you know, when I created this, I was using a, here, let's go to flat color and I'll turn off the color preview that's from Polypaint. So I'll turn off colorize, right? So we have, you know, I basically created polygroups to remesh this, and then I did a little bit of Z remesher. And yeah, it's really awesome because it's now giving me this mesh that I can use. By the way, I think when I merged this, I did have dynamic subdivision on the tongue, so I lost my thickness. And if you want to keep that thickness or bring it back, I'm simply going to go to Z Modeler and go to Extrude, Polygroup All, and then just left click and drag, and you see it auto polygroups, which is amazing, right? So convenient. So let's take that. I'll again do the same thing, just polygroups unwrap, right? Does it, for me, this makes polygrouping just amazingly fast. So again, I don't know. Yeah, I don't have divisions on this, so I'm going to go to Z plugin and just go to flatten. Now you're getting these huge stretching polygroups in part because of the gaps in between the boots. But if you look at all the major shells, they're really, really good. Okay. So yeah, let me just go back to unflatten. So the big thing is this. I'm going to just, again, I'll use select rectangle. It's actually this kind of polygrouping here that's sort of stretching everything out, right? And maybe the yellow loop around here. Because it's not broken into one or more, two or more polygroups, it's giving this like really weird distorted shape. So I'm going to just try to fix that by doing just at least a basic. I usually will do more cutting in Maya after this, but yeah, I'm basically just going to hide kind of the upper half, essentially. And yeah, I mean, it's a little messy in here. I should probably fix the topology, but I think I can get away with this in production terms. So for now, I'll probably leave it. Just for demonstration purposes. But yeah, usually if that's something that's a little broken, I would try to tweak it, clean it, remesh it a bit. But for now, this is okay. I'm going to just hit, I think, auto groups, but there are two groupings here. So again, I have to make sure that I keep these things still kind of contained and separate. So I'll go to auto groups, and then I'll take still this, there's this bigger pink group, interior group. So I'm going to isolate that again and hit Control W. And then I might even do kind of, yeah, maybe through the sides here or something. I might do another sort of split. Control W. Okay, and then we'll go to Z plugin, unwrap again, and hopefully we'll see a better layout. Oops. Yeah, so this is getting better. And you notice as you break down some of these big, like long stretching shells, these shells get bigger, right? So this is maintaining proportionality between the shells, all the shells, and trying its best to fit it. So eventually we have to start breaking, like I said, these sort of shells down more. You can actually still select this just like you would in the viewport. So if I Control Shift click on this polygroup, for example, which are some of the biggest ones, right? Control Shift click, and then if I Control click off of it, it masks it. And then if I go back to unflatten, okay, let me see where that is. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know if maybe the masking didn't carry over, but yeah, I think it's actually this sort of big stretch is yeah, basically kind of preventing the UVs from packing a bit better. So I'll just isolate it, hit Control W. So yeah, you have to find those little strips that may be preventing a better UV layout. So again, this area, let's grab this. So I'd probably have to split this a little bit more. So I'll isolate that. Okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna hide kind of the stuff I don't need currently. Yeah, for me, it makes more sense to sort of see and identify this stuff in polygroup terms than UV shells and trying to cut. So that's why I tend to like to organize my mesh this way first. Oops, there we go. Okay, so I'll hide that bottom edge, hide this bottom edge if I can. There's still some other stuff here from the rim. Okay. Now look at this from a top view and basically split this in half. Okay, Control W. Okay, unwrap one more time. Flatten. There. So this is getting better and better. I think I'll take this the rest of the way inside of Maya. It'll probably make a little more sense there, and I can do a little bit more fine-tuning. Oh yeah, these yellow groups, which are now probably the longer ones, are probably from the border shell from my extrusion here on the tongue. So yeah, sometimes too, if you actually isolate just that rim group and you go to group by normals, this is why I love this tool, because a lot of times it can get you like 80, and sometimes if you're lucky, 90 to 100% of the way there with just splitting these things, you know, based on angle. So as the angle becomes really steep, basically over 45 degrees, it suddenly splits it. And you can tweak this setting, and I do it often. So I say 40 degrees. Let's try 40 degrees, group by normals. So you see I'm actually getting better, more automated, right, grouping and splitting of these sections. So yeah, it's very, very worthwhile to kind of dig into that setting and to use it. There, I'll hide this, and then I'll just say auto group. There we go. So now when I do it one last time before potentially exporting to Maya here, I'll go to unwrap, flatten. Okay, so this, like I said, it's progressively getting better with more space dedicated towards the big pieces that are most visible. Okay, and let's go back to unflatten. So that's the boots. I think the hair's done. We'll leave the body. So my body, like I said, I really simplified it down. And I do have, this is the Dynamesh version with the paint on. I'm not sure if I have another version with polygroups. Yeah, this one still has some polygroups. So if you wanted to kind of keep this and try to transition that, I'll talk about that in a minute, about kind of like creating basically material IDs and whatnot. So that's one of the reasons I have two different ZRemeshed versions here. Okay, so I think, yes, let me just go through, double check, flatten, unflatten, and let's check eyeballs. Yeah, the eyeballs I replaced basically with non-polar spheres, basically meaning that there's no point where there's a bunch of triangles connected, and then I pretty much duplicated and projected the texture. So these are fine. And if you go to Z plugin, unwrap, okay, and I'll go to work on clone and flatten, they will get distorted. So what I tend to do is either like just split them front to back. So we can again polygroup these. Let's hide the fronts, hit Control W, again Z plugin, unwrap, reset, and then flatten. Oops, again, I have divisions on this one, so I'll go to work on clone and flatten, right? So these will be a lot less distorted, okay? Let's go back here. Now this is also super low res. I would probably not use that division level for production, but maybe something like 3,000 or 12,000. Yeah, so I think, yeah, I'm gonna go to 3,000 for now. But yeah, once you divide it or once you bake out your texture, it's gonna look a lot better. So 3,000 is fine as a base. And if you're using that as your new base division, this is when I start potentially deleting my lowest division levels. Okay, so I can delete that. And if you go back and take a look, again, I'll work on clone and flatten. I believe the UV should still be there. They're now just higher res, right? Now, they're a bit squared, which could be a little bit weird. So you might want to, here, let me just go back. Z plugin. I'll just re-unwrap just to make sure it's a smoother, right? Work on clone, flatten, right? So these are now a lot smoother. So that's very, very useful. Okay, let's go back to these eyeballs. I'll reset the palette again. So the eyeballs are done. I don't recall if there are polygroups here. Now, if you bring a mesh in, sometimes too, when you bring a mesh in externally from somewhere and it has UVs, ZBrush doesn't always recognize it. So you can say use existing seams and unwrap. I'll see if I can flatten. I don't recall if I have UVs or not. Yeah, I mean, I have kind of a rough set just from the existing polygroups. They're not bad. They're not the greatest. So I might just say that for Maya. Just to show you what are considered decent, let's say, head UV unwrap. Right, this is kind of the general pattern or a variation of the general pattern of UVs that is considered, you know, usable. it's almost like a Halloween mask, right? So you're sort of like splitting along the hairline or just above where the hair is shown, and then usually cutting to the back. And then sometimes there'll be a seam under the chin cutting down into the base of the neck. There are times when people cut the ears off. They don't always cut the ears off. The mouth cavity is usually split. If there's any mesh that kind of encapsulates the eye, which I recommend for the kind of like the eye cup, the eye cavity, that I usually split off. If there's any nostrils that recede in, again, there's a big angle change, right, from the outer edge of the nose. So just to show you, right? So from this edge, let's say, yeah, this edge here. Hold on a second. There we go. Turn off the smoothing. That's weird. I don't know. Oh, yeah. I was going to mention this too. So if I have UVs and you don't see the polygroup, sometimes that happens if you bring a mesh in from Maya for whatever reason. Under polygroups, you can actually say polygroup from UVs. So I can say auto group with UV. I'll just turn off colorize and yeah, that should be off, but let's see. Yeah, I'll say auto group with UV. Oh, I think, no, that's on. Strange, I can't see the polygrouping. Oh, there could be a texture on, so let me just double check if there is. There is texture on, so I'll turn that off, okay? So sometimes if you have a baked texture already, it might still be on, but let me just turn that off. Yeah, so these are the polygroups here. Now, again, I'm not crazy about them. I may change them, but for the most part, they're working fine now as a base, and I'll edit that inside of Maya, okay? Again, you can choose to regroup and then do your unwrap here. That's totally fine. But this is okay. So yeah, for the teeth here, again, just an easy way. It's going to auto group anyways, basically because the gums here are actually just, the teeth are floating inside the gums. So for, you know, and you think, oh, I don't want to deal with all this, right? Just auto group it. If they're separate floating pieces, auto group it. If you don't want to deal with all the angles and splitting it, group by normals. It's one of the fastest, easiest ways. And again, whenever there's a steep angle change, usually I go in 15-degree increments. So I'll go to group by normals and take a look at that. Like here, let me undo, and we'll just isolate maybe the kind of the bottom half here. So control shift clicking just to hide, okay? Right, so, right, group by normals. And this is why it's a default too. It's a very kind of common, like look at that. The bottoms of the teeth are now like isolated. Is it perfect in some areas? No, but it's good enough to get me a very good quick start, right? So if I hit, let's do the same. I'll just do it to all, group by normals, right? And you can increase the number. Like I said, I usually go in 15-degree chunks upwards or downwards, typically downwards like 45, 30, 15, or then I'll do like 5-degree increments like 15, 20, 25. But in this case, this is, like I said, I know from experience this is probably good enough, and I'll tweak the rest in Maya. Okay, so if I go to flatten, unflatten, I didn't do the, here, I'll turn off use existing seams because there aren't any. Unwrap. Yeah, in the future, actually, what I'm going to do with this model is actually pre-unwrap it, make it fully optimized so you don't have to deal with it, right? And again, if it's an asset you're going to reuse and reuse, why redo the work over and over? For example, on games like, I don't know, Assassin's Creed, most games, they literally have one base human, and it becomes all the male and female characters in the game, all the human or humanoid characters, and the UVs are all the same. All you're doing is like loading in a different high poly sculpt with different textures, doing different paint. So maybe attaching different accessories and clothes, right? So anyways, that's, yeah, let's go to flatten. I mean, pretty good, right? For like 2-3 clicks. This is one of the reasons I love ZBrush and the polygrouping system. It is so efficient, okay? Now the gums, like I said, these are going to be distorted because, sorry, let me go back and unflatten. All right, one of the reasons I know they're going to be distorted is that you have this big angle change. So at the very least, I'd probably, you know, just to get myself a little bit ahead of the game, I'll just go to Control Shift Click. And again, easy to do in symmetry. Control Shift Click, and we'll basically hide this off. And you can do Control Shift X, which expands, or Control Shift S, which shrinks. So I might, yeah, maybe expand up to here and hit Control W. Actually, let me undo that. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Control W, right? So I can do the same thing down here. I'll just isolate this, and then, yeah, basically. By the way, I've noticed this. It's kind of weird. Sometimes in symmetry, the edge loop tool does weird, like it shoots off in weird branches, even though this is pretty much perfectly symmetrical. You can turn off the symmetry if it's an issue, and then just manually tidy up your sort of selections after, you know. Again, there's some little bugs. It could be me too. I mean, maybe, you know, the model isn't maybe perfectly in X position, so that could be why there's some issues there. But again, watch this, right? I will unwrap, flatten, and guaranteed that's quicker than you've probably ever done UVs before, right? So again, you know, people worry about AI and stuff like that. Yes, it's a bit daunting, but I feel like I can do things as well or better than AI and oftentimes faster without having to redo it. So don't panic about that stuff. Okay, so I'm pretty close to ready to sending this over and basically treating it as a single object. And I'm going to talk about how we can still keep the mesh, you know, even if we split the mesh up later on, we can still organize the materials and the UVs in a certain way that allows us higher resolution, multiple texture maps, but still optimize it for production that is like considered low budget, no budget, which is what you're doing, but is also in line with what professional level texture artists and character artists would basically do. So in this case, I do want to make sure I sort of capture the silhouette of the other model that I have. So I'm going to just do a project all. So I'll turn off all the other tools by holding shift click and then exposing my two tools. So, you know, there are some like shoulder pads here, and I do want these shells to kind of be roughly close to one another, right? So if I solo that, right, this doesn't exactly fit with this shell. So I'm going to take this and do a project all. And hopefully you've already done this to some degree, but if not, we can go tool by tool and do that. Sorry, let me go to project under subtool, project all. I'm going to say yes to copying the color. That's fine. One of the issues I have in this mesh is that I sort of just went with a cleaner mesh for deformation and there's shoulder pads. Now this mesh, even if you smooth it, and if you want to preview this, you can go to dynamic subdivision and just turn on dynamic, and we'll turn off the color for now because again, it's not really relevant, but you see it kind of gives you this lumpiness. So what I recommend doing, you know, we can still kind of keep the volume, but blend the transition. The other alternative to this would have been, you know, for me to basically have a polygroup in that shoulder pad area that matched the shape. So it would match the deformation better. But in this case, I'm fine with it just being more of an indication because I'm going to use the texture. So I'm holding shift and letting go, right? And that gives me kind of a nice blend. And I'll do the same thing on the pocket. Okay, so shift, let go. Okay, and I'll check the, let's go to blend as well. So yeah, similar thing here. You know, it's not quite, you know, some of the edge loops don't quite match up with the pad. So I'm going to shift and let go, and that kind of helps me blend the shape a bit better. Yeah, and I might just watch out the, oops. This might watch out a little bit for the cuff area as well. And you know, some other things you can do, you can also try to maybe reinforce certain shapes if you want. You can do a little bit of editing. You can add let's say a bevel in here somewhere if you wanted to. So again, because of, you're going to be smoothing this at render time inside of Maya. All right, sometimes I'll tweak these shapes a little bit more. So maybe I'll scale the edge loop here. And then I'll isolate this and just kind of like average this out a bit better. Okay. And so we have maybe more of a consistent shape here. Oops. So shift, let go, and then, you know, just kind of polish the shape a little bit better. There we go. All right, so we can do stuff like that to sort of clean up our character. And again, make sure when it's smooth that it has a pleasing shading and silhouette. Okay. I think I have something similar here. Yeah, like there's a few things kind of missing or amiss with this. So again, shift, let go is kind of my favorite tool lately. And I'm just there to kind of get the general volume in and not necessarily have a perfect match. Like I said, if I'd planned a bit better, I probably would have cut maybe more of a pad shape in there for it to really take that shape on better. So, you know, those are some things you can do in production, but aren't always necessary either. Okay, so now that's done, let me go back to all this. I'm going to turn on all my low poly stuff. Let's see, the hair. Let me put that in the head group. Turn this on, this on, this on, this on. The body. Oops, what's happening with the body? There. Okay. And again, I'll turn off the, and if there's any dynamic subdivision, I will just turn it off so it's easier for me to preview the mesh in its like true low poly state. This one I don't think is dynamically divided. That's good. Okay, so what I recommend doing, there's one or two ways to deal with this. And I know sometimes in the lab we have an issue with GoZ being weird. So, oh, and one other thing too, I should double check. I'm just looking at the clothing here. It did get kind of projected maybe in a bit of an odd way. So let me go back. Yeah, I'll see if I can just nudge this back a bit. So sometimes we have these issues. I should have stored maybe a morph target before doing this, but that's okay. We'll just tweak that shape a bit. Okay. Again, holding shift, letting go. It's such a useful tool because it really kind of helps you kind of solve any silhouette issues and shape issues. Okay, so yeah, basically if I hit BPR, this is, oops, do BPR again. All right, this is all the stuff that we're gonna see, all the polygroups, all the UVs, okay? So you can go to Go Z. This line, I'll just mention, this whole line here, Go Z, all visible. This, if I hit visible, it's gonna send all the tools at once to Maya. So I'll do that right now. By the way, you should double check, you know, the scale of my character. Remember we talked about this. I think I had a scale factor of something like 8.5 which is my preferred scale. So it's one thing I will like to do, but I'll save that for kind of the end process. Anyways, yeah, this is the whole character. Now, again, they're in pieces and they can remain in pieces. I do recommend also relabeling things. I'll come back to that in a minute, but it's very, very useful to start renaming this stuff. Now, like I said, the way I've treated this is that each individual object kind of has its own unwrap, and we can still continue to work that way. But eventually what I want to do is to sort of treat this as essentially a single mesh. So what you can do is take all these different UVs essentially and go to UV shell, okay? And then we can literally do a layout for all this. So it'll pack all of this stuff into, oh, there's an issue with some mesh. So I'm going to try to tell it to fix it. I'm not sure which part that is, but we'll see. I think it might be the boots. They seem like they have an issue. So I'll try that. Layout UV. Always fix non-manifold. Usually a good option to enable. Hit fix. And we'll try again. Okay, let's try one more time. Okay, so I'm going to try part by part now just to double check and see which object it might be. We'll go to shell. So this is, again, this is like a crucial period where you're going to find errors and we should fix them. Now, if you've already skinned a pre-existing version of the mesh, that's fine. You can actually transfer or try to copy over the skin weights and it should mostly work. You can rebind this new version with the cleaner UVs to that mesh, okay? Because that often happens simultaneously. Modeling, rigging, animation, and skinning can all happen, and texturing can all happen simultaneously, okay? So don't worry about that. I'm going to try, yeah, so it's actually in the hair. There's some problems there. Unfold, unfold. Let me see. I'll try to do a layout again. Let's see. See, sometimes the bug hunting can be a little bit tough. But let me just double check something here. Yeah, I like to use the tool in here, Mesh Cleanup. The options I mainly turn on for a situation like this is lamina faces, non-manifold geometry. So again, it's a face that shares all its edges. Again, it's almost like an invisible face with all the edges kind of piled on top of each other. So it's like two or more edges stacked on top of each other. Similarly, you can have something like zero edge length. Faces with zero geometry. They're kind of variations on the same thing. The only thing I don't choose is faces with zero map area, because if there's any portion of the mesh that is actually useful but has no UVs, it'll collapse to like a single point and it'll screw up the mesh. So I'll go to Edit, Save Settings, hit Cleanup. Try one more time. Unfold. By the way, I should go into the options too. I usually like to turn on Fix Non-Manifold Geometry. Also, sometimes you'll have the Legacy tool, which if it looks like this, then you want to make sure you can activate this. Sometimes the plugin for this gets disabled for whatever reason. I also like to turn on Layout UVs, and because I generally work around 4K texture size, and I like a 16 pixel border around each shell and around the border, these are my preferred settings, and I typically will just go and save them. Hit Apply and Close. Yeah, so in this case, I've got a bit of mesh fixing to do, so we'll take a break and come back to that.